Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first episode on Roundtable Sports Network covering the Senior Bowl. You're probably wondering why all four of us are in this beautiful home in Mobile, Alabama. Well, I'm going to tell you why. All right? Because we had a hell of a day watching practices for the national roster, the American roster, of all of these prospects going to the 2025 NFL Draft. We got interviews, got footage, and a hell of a lot of things to talk about. I am here joined by Colby, Richie, and also our good friend Troy. Let's go around and see how everyone's experience was so far today. Colby, talk to me, brother.
Yeah, it was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I feel like just seeing all the media that's there, the guys that you originally get the news from, the guys that you see on the TV, but just seeing those guys sitting next to you like regular people and seeing how they interact in these type of circumstances in their everyday lives really was our first look at the media for the first time and our first look at what our future could be like. So it was definitely intriguing, not even from a player standpoint, but just from a Roundtable Sports, a media standpoint, from a personal standpoint, just how big this was. I mean, even for me, being able to meet some of the media involved with the Patriots. I mean, we saw Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel was like maybe 50 feet from me, bro, at one point. Like, Mike Vrabel was close. I'm seeing the Patriots general managers. We're being, right next, like within touching distance of, NFL general managers, NFL head coaches. It was such a surreal experience. And of course, to get my first ever interview with a player was absolutely big.
And you killed that. We're going to play it on the show as well, folks. We're excited about it. We are very excited about it. We're live from Mobile, Alabama. Our first time ever covering anything in terms of Roundtable Sports Network. Today has been a whirlwind for us four, and we got a lot of content and a lot of breakdowns we're going to bring you of the biggest standouts of day number one of the 2025 Reese's Senior Bowl. Let's get into a big shout out to BetUS for sponsoring Roundtable Sports. We're going to get into them a little bit later. Troy, what was your overall reaction of your first ever Reese's Senior Bowl coverage from a media standpoint, man?
I think Colby said it all, man. Colby laid that out real nicely. I don't want to follow that up because he broke it down.
Break it down for
But,
us.
I mean, look, man, what he said, man, it was fantastic. I didn't expect it to be like that. Like any expectation I had of what the Senior Bowl was going to be laid out like was not it. It was a lot more open. It was more like free form, just kind of what happens. But as he said, man, the amount of cool people that you see is insane. And then the views too. It was the coolest thing. Me and Dan were chilling. We were watching the linebackers at one point, and you're so close to them that you can hear them getting coached up. It's fantastic. So now it's the coolest thing. I mean, I've watched the Senior Bowl practice. People love the Senior Bowl. But to be there in person, it's unreal, man. And I'm happy to be here, man. I just appreciate being here. It's awesome.
And the good thing is, folks, that we are going to be here for each and every single practice, doing a nice little stream like this for each and every single one of you, because we know, right? Unless you're a Kansas City Chiefs or a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you are deep, deep, deep into mock draft season. Well, have no fear, because we have a feeling after today and throughout the rest of the week that you absolutely might find somebody that you fall in love with for the second or third round projections. But guys, I think it's good to start off roster by roster. In the morning, we started off on the national offense, the national defense, the national squad over in the Senior Bowl. So we're going to walk around and we are going to highlight exactly some of the biggest names that stood out on that national team. I want to start off with Colby. And Colby, you tell me the one guy that really stood out to you today.
Yeah, there were a lot of guys that definitely went back and forth. Definitely one of my big ones, though, was Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver. Now,
yeah.
I know for some people, I'm talking about you, Dose. Maybe we had him, as our top wide receiver heading into these practices where I think, some people might have expected he would have made bigger plays, but we also have to keep in mind, the circumstances. He's not going to be the number one wide receiver in the draft. He's not going to be the number two, the number three. I'd have him slate him in at number 5. Some have him even lower. But for me, it was the potential that this guy has. I don't think that there's anyone who's gotten better at the receiver position each and every single year at the collegiate level than Higgins was able to. I mean, you even look at some of his numbers, a 2.2% drop rate at the collegiate level, a 58.3% contested catch rate, and also had a grade against man of 88.5. This is a guy who is 6'4". You think about him as this big contested outside receiver, but the footwork of this guy, I mean, Richie, you can attest to this. I think all of you can attest to this.
Dude.
The footwork for a guy like that was absolutely insane. The route tree for a guy like that, I think, was absolutely insane.
I saw him what was it, press coverage. It was just a one-on-one drill, and he completely beat someone off the line, and I was impressed with the footwork to the point where I thought he was 5'11", and then I looked up and I saw number 9, and I realized who it was. I'm like, that man's moving that quickly, and I was blown away, and Colby told me, like, nah, Richie, that's been my guy. And guess what Colby did? Colby got to interview Higgins, which is the first ever. This is history, folks. This is Roundtable Sports history. This is the first ever Roundtable Sports exclusive interview by Colby. All right, so we're going to play it for you guys. Shout out to Colby for interviewing Higgins right after practice.
Out here at the Senior Bowl with wide receiver Jaden Higgins. Jaden, how does it feel to be back on the field, putting on the pads again?
Yeah, it's awesome. I feel like I haven't been on the field in a little while. It was great coming out here and competing with the guys, ready to get back tomorrow and do the same thing.
Yeah, man, for sure. You look like the best wide receiver on the field today. What does it mean to you to really come out here and raise that draft stock?
I just want to show what I can do, what I do on film, what I've been doing all year, all throughout my career. Just continue to come out here and, get the plays down and dominate my matchup.
Any NFL teams you've talked to yet?
Yeah, we talked to a couple. We talked to like 16 teams last night. But yeah, just a rotation of those guys.
My man, and last question I want to ask you is if you could work with any quarterback in the NFL, what quarterback would it be?
Man, any quarterback, honestly. I love all quarterbacks. As long as they can, get me the ball and do what I do, then I'd love to go anywhere.
Jaden Higgins, guys. Colby Cochran reporting from Mobile, Alabama, Roundtable Sports.
Roundtable Sports. Look at that, Colby.
Roundtable Sports, beautiful outro.
It was absolutely beautiful. And guys, listen, Colby and Troy were by far the professionals here today because Richie
Hey, I got some good clips, though.
You did have some very good clips,
You did.
and we're going to get into the stories for sure, but all 4 of us popped our cherry for interviewing NFL, soon-to-be NFL players. 50% of it went fantastic, and the other 50% had some memes that came out of it, some footage that will never be released from my phone on the internet for very good reasons. However, it's funny that we bring up Higgins, excuse me, because my biggest standout just so happened to be the DB that was lined up against him several reps. And this guy, in my opinion, as a Buffalo Bills fan, he is the number 1 guy I am looking for a potential Rasul Douglas replacement or anybody that's looking for a solid boundary corner. And that just so happens to be, and so it's
Azareye'h Thomas.
Azareye'h Thomas out of Florida State. Yeah. I'm telling you, his man coverage was sticky. He was all over each and every single wide receiver that we could have seen. And hands down, the best rep I saw was between him and also Higgins today. Slept on prospect. I'm giving him like a second, third round sort of guy, and he would be an immediate impact player just based off of first glance and first impression.
Yeah, Dan, I got to give you another name too. Someone else who had a really good play against Higgins. I mean, not a lot of guys I feel like were able to make plays against him, which is tough. Again, a guy with really good footwork and is 6'4", very hard to defend. But Quincy Riley out of Louisville, the cornerback, also has some good moments against him.
And another wide receiver, you said to Higgins that he was the best wide receiver of the day. I think there was another receiver that also had a tremendous day at practice, and that just so happens to be Tez Johnson, the Oregon wide receiver. He was pretty much unguardable. There's a difference between Johnson's game and Higgins' game. Higgins is that prototypical outside receiver, big body, can move very quick with his feet at that size, but more your 50-50 guy. Where at the other side, Tez Johnson, just his route running, his ability to create separation was just really off the chart. So at the end of the day, those are my biggest standouts, but I want to kick it off to you, Troy, because you had an awesome interview walking off the field, and you're a Michigan fan, so we're going to play the clip, but what was your thoughts of getting an awesome Roundtable Sports exclusive interview with that running back from Michigan?
Man, that was the coolest thing ever, man. I'll be honest with you, man. Just getting that interview, like, him going to Michigan was the reason I wanted that interview first and foremost. But I do feel like this is what the Senior Bowl's about. This is what the draft's about. It's players like that, right? It's not where everybody can look at his production and be like, who is this guy? What did he do the last few years? He's going to fall off. But it's about finding those players where you find a moment where he's matched up against one of the best receivers, handles business, and you walk away and you're like, wait a minute, he's capable of that? And I think that's what it's about, especially when you get to this spot, because a lot of these dudes aren't going to have the best production, or they will, and they're at small schools, so there's a reason that it's like, okay, they're going to go a little bit later. So it's about finding if they're capable of doing those things, and I think he's a perfect example of a guy that's capable of much more in the passing game that didn't really get exposed at Michigan. And I think he has a skill set for that, and I think this interview, I try to answer that with this interview. That's what I was going for.
Hey, Donovan, we're here with Donovan Edwards, man. I'm a Michigan fan, by the way. You know
man,
what I mean? You know what I mean? We ended the season pretty darn good, bro. Hey, I just want to ask you one question, and it's in the passing game. What do you think you can bring to the table in the passing attack? I feel like not enough people talk about that aspect of your game, but we see that you can get open. You know what I mean? So, like, what are we missing there?
I would definitely say the thing that I bring is first the pass protection aspect. You know, being able to pass protect first, identifying blitzes and watching safeties in the rotation, and just knowing the defensive schemes. Also, too, I just believe in myself. I have tremendous faith and confidence in my own, not only my hands but my route running ability too. So.
Oh, man, I'm excited to see you this season, man. Good luck.
Thank you.
Wherever you go, hopefully it's a Lion, but you know what I'm saying?
Hopefully it's Elias. We have Troy over here recruiting for Dan Campbell.
Yeah, bro.
You're recruiting out there, Troy. You're recruiting?
It was a very biased interview. I'm gonna be honest. I'm watching that back. Yeah, that wasn't very professional. You know
That was a Dose of Dion interview.
That was a Lions interview.
It's all right, bro. You told him a little bit about you. You told him a little bit about you. But, you know, Richie, too, something I wanted to hit on that you talked about was Tez Johnson, because I would definitely say that overall Tez Johnson was the better and more productive wide receiver today. But for me, that's why I think Higgins was more impressive, because, you know, a guy like Tez Johnson, he's a little bit smaller, he's fast, he gets down the field quick. In these types of practices, more specifically in the one-on-one matchups that we were watching, in which Tez Johnson really balled out, those are the type of matchups where those guys do ball out. The speedsters really do ball out, but it's when you're starting to work through a little bit more contact, when you're having to go up against 7-on-7s, can these guys continue to ball out? So that is something that, you know, for the rest of the week, I'm going to continue to watch. You know, when it gets tougher each and every single day of practice, when the pads go on, when there's more contact, can Tez Johnson continue to show out?
Yeah. So it's great to talk about guys that hyped us up, but obviously with every single practice that you watch, you walk into it and you're disappointed by some performances. Specifically on the national roster, I have one, and I do want to hear y'all's takes on this. Everyone I was talking to, and that was including you guys, and then just like random conversations I was starting right in the seats, everyone was like, you have to watch Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green. Have to watch this guy. He's going to be absolutely generational. He's like the next guy, right? One of the only memorable reps I saw from him today was watching a perfect pass bounce off of his chest.
Yeah, literally.
Like
that was a rough one.
Falling down, like looking unathletic. I was talking to a couple of people and they were saying, oh, like he's also a liability in like pass protection as well. He's undersized at that overall position. Am I being too hard on the young man, or did y'all see the exact
He
same thing?
flashed in individual drills in terms of, but what's individual drills? That means there's no one covering him. So anybody can flash. He made pretty good catches there. So he had a good start. But then when the pads were on in terms of coverage, he struggled. He had that crucial drop. And I did not really see anything where I'm like, oh, that's a tight end that can be one of the best coming into the NFL draft, because Tyler Warren is one of the better tight ends coming out of the draft. And then you have him, who was number 2. And there's some people have him even number 1. So definitely an intriguing prospect. And I want to throw in another one that a lot of people are asking about, even in the chat, which is Dylan Gabriel, the Oregon quarterback, who was probably the only quarterback that really showed anything in for the national side of things, because Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and those boys were in the second practice, which we'll get into in a bit. But Dylan Gabriel is going viral for throwing the most like 74-mile-per-hour pass that they caught. So his velocity's there. He has touch. He had a really good, I noticed with Dylan Gabriel, he had the ball stretched down the field with touch, precision, accuracy. He looked very confident on the field, and he was definitely the best quarterback for this specific roster, the national roster. I mean, he definitely separated himself, and I feel like when you see his game as a lefty, as a southpaw, I feel like he does have a lot of potential. I'm not going to say he wowed me to the point where I'm even like, yo, the Jets should take a flyer on him, because the Jets are still looking for their, young quarterback to build with Jordan Travis, and we'll see about Rodgers. It's another conversation, but Dylan Gabriel looked pretty good. I'm not going to say he looked bad. I'm not going to say he looked excellent, but he clocked as one of the hardest throwing football passes in Senior Bowl history at 74 mile per hour.
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to Fannin, I was definitely a little bit underimpressed when it came to him, especially with that one play we're all talking about, because he was wide open. He was able to turn his back to the defensive back. It doesn't really work through too much coverage because he has the size, and then it just bounces off his hands. Now, this isn't something that worries me too much. Again, this is day one, These guys are doing this for the first time. They're working with different quarterbacks. That's something that we have to keep in mind. If this continues to be a thing over the next few days, then we start to worry about it. Fannin at the collegiate level, he had a drop rate of only 3.3%. He had a contested catch rate of 54.5%. So, again, not a problem for him in the past. Is it maybe just early on jitters?
So what about you, Troy?
Well, with Fannin, I wanted to point this out just real quick with this whole group, because we're all going to watch the game when that happens, and that's what most people are going to be tuned into. Just look at the names on that entire edge position that they labeled out there. That entire position is loaded. I'm just reading through it.
It's crazy.
I thought some of these were mixed a little bit. That entire unit was fantastic. Ty Robinson, didn't know who the guy was. I thought he was awesome all day long. I was like, okay. Donovan's considered to be a first-round pick potentially. Josiah Stewart was great. Mike Green, I thought he was a little bit down for Mike Green.
Did your boy Joyner pop?
Joyner popped a little
Did
bit.
he?
I even got a clip, Richie. I don't know if I can play
Did
it or
you?
not.
Now,
But
guys,
I did a little something.
fun little insight about our boy Joseph Dion. Okay, last night we were watching some film, and he was studying film. Like, I've never seen anybody. He was studying Ja Joyner's film, edge rusher from Minnesota. I'm like, okay, where does this guy projected to go? It's not even ranked. This guy's watching unranked prospect film. So this is why we got him part of Roundtable Sports, baby, bringing us the intriguing analysis of these prospects. I love it.
He did some work, bro. Shout out to John Joyner. But I think that's gonna be a loaded room that we're gonna watch. It felt like there was a side of two sides. Like each practice had second practice I thought had a loaded offense line. You'd put a unit out there, you're like, these dudes could all play. That was the same for the defensive front. And then I love the fact that you brought up the corners.
Yeah.
Because we're going to talk about all the receivers, but every corner on there I think you could point to that made a play.
Yeah.
You guys brought up two guys that did it, but yeah, for me it's the edge rushers. That stood out across the board. Even my man from Central Arkansas. I don't see his name on there.
You know what?
But
We're not mentioning one name, though.
Oh.
You know what? We all were talking about him before we hopped on. So the fact that nobody said his name yet, and maybe it's because none of us actually know how to say his name. He's a defensive tackle out of Virginia Tech.
Oh my God.
Aeneas Peebles, bro. This guy was standing out. 2 back-to-back plays where he made a play behind the line of scrimmage in the run game. You could hear him yelling from the other side of the stadium, getting pumped up. Looked good in his one-on-one matchups, which I think Dose you can allude to also. This is a guy that I'm looking for heavy in the interior of the defensive line on day 2.
Yeah, most definitely. I did look up his measurables, by the way. I don't think that he would be a one tech. He's 6'1", but like his power is there.
Yeah.
His power is there. Like he's definitely going to be able to get to the quarterback, and what I saw from all of his reps were absolutely insane. But going back to that edge rusher comment, I saw something, and granted, it's the Senior Bowl, right? And I hate when people compare draft classes, but I've been seeing things floating around the internet where people are saying that this is the best edge class since the Max Crosby and Nick Bosa class that came out, like from that year, where like you had like 7 or 8 elite edge rushers on this day in this class by itself. Is this going to be a class that's similar to that?
I mean, it's mid-heavy. It's. I mean, there's obviously a couple top guys. Carter could go top 5 easy, but a lot of these guys feel like mid-round picks, like you point out, since we started second and third round.
Yeah,
that's loaded because everybody wants a pass rusher. This is the perfect class for that. It's not a team that's like, I don't need an extra pass rusher. So I think it's loaded from that sense. Is what most of the Senior Bowl is going to be full with. That's who we're seeing, and a lot of these guys. I mean, now here's the other flip side though. We do have to keep in mind. Usually, a lot of times you get to this, the offensive line's super shaky.
Yeah.
Like usually, Senior Bowl's a disaster for offensive line. We saw a ton of muff snaps today. You're going to see penalties left and right.
Yeah, there was a lot of penalties today.
There's
a lot of golden laundry, by the way.
So it's like the linemen that stand out are more than anything. And I'll point out a guy that I thought was a little bit negative. It's Colby's guy. Wyatt Millum. You know what I mean? Colby tried to act like this wasn't his guy. No, man. I thought it was a
Who was he? What
Wyatt
position?
Millum, offensive tackle out of West Virginia. I just thought it was a down. I thought there was more losses than wins there. And he's one of those guys that is like, day 2, possibly day 1.
Yeah, I'm at like tackle. I think I'm at like tackle 6.
Yeah.
I think Brochmel also had him at like tackle 6.
It's like he's up there. So I mean, we're talking about all these edge rushers, and he was the guy I thought he didn't play to that level. Like Connerly, I thought played at the level that you would have expected. Zabel played way above the level that I would have expected there. I mean, he looked like a top 5 offensive lineman that can play everywhere. But that's a player in Wyatt who people wonder about the flexibility. Today, I thought he had more losses than wins.
Yeah.
And I think it's a concern.
And it's really important to note.
State always brings out crazy offensive
Always.
It's really important to note too, like when you're at these practices, you got multiple drills happening at the same time. So me personally, I was focusing on wide receiver, quarterback, corners today. And luckily we had Troy focusing on the trenches because you can't see it. They're happening at the same time. So I have no breakdown of the trenches, unfortunately. I don't know anything that happened today. So I'm happy to hear all this because the Jets need some trenches. Every team needs, work in the trenches. And I just want to remind everybody, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is Roundtable Sports' Senior Bowl Day 1 recap. If you guys can do us a simple favor by liking this show and subscribing, this is the main Roundtable Sports Network YouTube channel. We're going to be continuously providing you content. And don't forget to follow us over on X and Instagram at Roundtable Sports Network because we're posting all of our content over there. On social media, and we're doing a lot of fun stuff. So is there anything else you guys want to add before we transition to the American roster?
Funny enough.
Dan, go ahead first.
So funny enough, I feel like all day leading up to this practice, we were so obsessed with watching the American roster practice, right?
Oh yeah, dude.
But I would say that I was a hell of a lot more impressed with this national squad than I
100%.
was with the American squad. And that could be a great segue because there are some big names on this American roster that laid eggs today. Completely huge disappointments.
Is that like
all across the board?
Bet US kind of pick? You're leaning.
Yeah.
Leaning toward the
And
other
yeah,
team.
I was leaning toward the other team.
Yeah,
and stuff like
man.
that, but,
Speaking
like,
of Bet US,
And you know, while,
Dan,
while
what do you know
Richie,
about Bet US?
while Richie pulls that up real quick, one thing I want to say too is that Zabel, he was the offensive lineman of the day, but he was also working at guard. Many people have him as a tackle. He was working in at guard today, so just something to remember.
And
He was out of position. He was out of position.
I think he's a better fit at guard.
Yeah, he looked good at guard. He was the best offensive lineman on the field today.
It's like size-wise, remember we talked about it in the draft. Check out Draftaholics for that reason.
Draftaholics, yeah. Live every Thursday.
by the way, Draftaholics, what they're referring to is our weekly draft show. It is Colby and Joseph Dion and Broshimo, who is a great content creator, and Derek, our Colts creator, live on this YouTube channel every Thursday, all right, 5 p.m. EST. So definitely, guys, go check that out right here on Roundtable Sports. But I definitely want to get your guys' thoughts because usually, the Senior Bowl is a week before the Super Bowl. And I'm sorry to bring this up to you, Dan Mitchell, because you wanted to be in part of this Super Bowl, but you're not, all right? Yeah. I wanted to share the odds of the Super Bowl. Chiefs, Eagles is pretty even on BetUS Sportsbook. The Chiefs are barely favorites. If you guys want to go over to BetUS, they are the #1 online sportsbook. You guys can get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your next two. That's up to $2,000. Big time shout out to BetUS as always for being the proud sportsbook sponsor of Roundtable Sports. I mean, listen, I'll go to you, Dan, because you actually have the most. You lost in the divisional round, so I can't go to you, Dosa Dion. But who do you got in this game? Or let's focus on the over-under. Is this going to be a high-scoring, low-scoring game? What do you like in this?
So I'm going to tell you what. This will be a low-scoring game. It's going to be a 20-17 sort of matchup. I have the Kansas City Chiefs winning. I have lost way too much money and way too much dignity betting against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I will no longer do that again. So give me the Kansas City Chiefs at 3P.
I'm telling you guys, don't bet against the Chiefs. Every time you do, you lose. Every time you bet for them, you win money. I'll tell you firsthand experience. But I also want to open this up for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions in the chat that you guys want to ask us about certain prospects or any type of prospects that we're not missing, please let us know in the chat. We really do appreciate it. Someone said most impressive wide receiver today. We talked about them already, so definitely rewind. We talked about Tez Johnson and Higgins. Those two boys definitely stepped up. So let's get into the American roster. And I kind of want to start it off because I had a lot of hype for a specific quarterback prospect that you can argue has the most hype heading into the Senior Bowl, which is Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. And I'm not going to sit here and say he had a terrible practice, but I'm also not going to sit here and say he had a good practice. I think that he had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And particularly, he fumbled 2 snaps. Now, it wasn't in the shotgun. He was under center. And to be fair, he is, getting snaps for the first time under center in a long time. Also by a center that is a former guard, and they don't really have chemistry. Not really an excuse, but that's something he said after practice I heard in an interview. And he also had some inconsistent throws, and then you'll see him do like a fake handoff like Aaron Rodgers and throw an absolute dart on the run. No pun intended, Jackson Dart throwing darts. So he had a lot of highs and lows. I don't really think he raised his draft stock, but I also don't think his draft stock went down. So he has 2 more days of Senior Bowl practice to try to bounce back. But definitely I was not super impressed. But I did have fun clips of Jackson Dart that we got on behalf of Roundtable Sports. I love to play for you guys. Someone asked him what he would feel like if he went to New York. Is that something that you'd be down for? Because New York, it's a big deal, right? It's the biggest city in the world. It's the biggest media market, and he's not afraid of it, according to Jackson Dart. So let's listen to what he said to that question.
New York kind of guy? I mean, New York is not for everybody.
No, I'm not scared of the big city. Not at all. I've loved New York. Visited there a lot growing up. So, honestly, that's not even back in my mind. I think it's a great organization and love playing for them.
Jet! He's a Jet. It's official.
Well, let's keep in mind, too, when he says New York, he could be talking about the Giants or the Jets.
I know, trust me. But that just tells me that he's not afraid of going to the biggest media market in the world. So definitely excited to see what Jackson Dart looks like in day 2 and day 3.
Yeah, most definitely. It's funny, like when you look at these overall quarterbacks, I'm really excited to talk about Jalen Milroe here for a second. And a stat that somebody told me that I'm convinced answers a lot of the questions around Mr. Milroe himself. However, with Jackson Dart, like I said, I love his confidence out there. It was a really funny story about what Richie had to ask him. And
I can tell you the story.
Yeah. So why don't you tell the story?
Yeah,
of
so-
your question to Jackson Dart and how it made you feel.
It's a funny story. So all these prospects, you're on the field afterwards, you're trying to get an interview, and there was a little crowd around Jackson Dart. And I was like, I got to get in here. So I had my camera out right in front of his face, ready to ask a question. I had a question in my brain I was ready to ask him, right? And someone next to me stole my question. And the question that someone asked him was, who do you model your game after in the NFL? So someone stole my question, so I had to think on the fly, like, all right, what am I going to ask him now? So I thought, all right, what part of your game would you think would translate to the NFL the most? And I had to cut people off, right? In the media, you got to cut people off. There's like 20 people trying to ask him a question. So I just thought on the fly, what part of your game would translate to most of the NFL? He's like, watch the tape. It'll speak for itself. I was like, oh, okay, I bet. All right. And then he kind of just shut me down. I was like, all right, bro, the confidence is crazy, bro. I like the confidence. It'll work in New York.
I'll tell you what, though. I thought Dart, for the most part, I'll be honest, especially towards the end when we saw him, I thought he was making good decisions. Like, when they got out there, they were doing the 7-on-7s. I thought he was making good decisions. He was super decisive. And it's just, the expectation's super high with Jackson Dart.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. Expectation's so high, so it doesn't reach it. You're like, feel disappointed.
From the outside looking in, I don't know how deep this is. I do worry at times when I watch him, just body language-wise. I just worry about the...
I did notice that, yeah.
When things are bad, it's like, what's that going to look like? It's one thing if your team's successful. It's fire, it's energy, it's great. But it was like always the thing that would pop up with Baker. Well, when things are bad, what does it look like? That's the early concern that I get. I felt that even at the Senior Bowl today when things, with the offensive line went shaky. But in terms of just like decisiveness towards the end, I thought that was a positive. He was staying on time.
Yeah, and his demeanor is definitely something I've noticed. And someone in the chat, Henny, my boy Henny, he put in the super chat, I think Dart will be gone before our second round pick. Yeah, I mean, he has to really go off in these next 2 days at the Senior Bowl and in the Combine before that happens. But you did ask, what was this answer to the original question I was going to ask of who does he model his game after? And I was able to get that on video as well. So here is Jackson Dart talking about the quarterbacks that he molds his game after the most.
Oh, man. I mean, I think everybody will try to say Pat, but, Pat's only Pat. I love what Jalen Hurts does. I love what Baker Mayfield does. And I love what Josh Allen does. Those are some of my favorites to watch for sure.
What about Jalen Milroe?
So he threw in Josh Allen at the end because he felt bad, yeah.
Well, no, not at all. Who asked him about Jalen Milroe?
Yeah, it was weird. The question was, is there a friendly rivalry between you and Jalen Milroe? And he was like, nah.
No? No. It's all right. It's funny about Milroe because while y'all were downfield watching the trenches, and so I was sitting back and I was watching a lot of those 7-on-7 and the 11-on-11s as well with Milroe. And I noticed one thing right in particular that he had almost 0 attempts downfield, was exclusively swing passes, short passes off to the left and the right. And I was sitting next to my buddy and he was just like, yeah, did you know that his hand measurables are the smallest of any quarterback that has ever gone through the draft process? And a quarterback with his hand size has never been drafted ever. And I guess talking to Bama fans, they say that explains a lot because he is the epitome of hot and cold. Sometimes he went out there in Bama and looked like a number 1 overall pick, but sometimes he went out there and looked like, one of the worst that should be playing at the JUCO level. I was really not very impressed with what that QB was putting out on the field today. I'm not sure if you guys saw anything different, but
yeah. And I want to ask Colby this because me and Colby were talking about Milroe, and then Colby said to me, "Yeah, these type of drills you won't really look good in." I'm like, "These are the type of drills he needs to look good in because what is he only run the ball? He can't pass."
Yeah, I mean for sure, you want him to look good as a passer. It's a pass first league. You have to be able to consistently and adequately pass the ball down the field, get chunk plays in the NFL. We know this, but Jalen Milroe, he's young, he's developing. He's very raw. He's the type of player that whatever team ends up drafting him, he needs to sit back for at least an entire year and just learn. He is super athletic. He is super mobile, and that's his game. That's his style. That's why I said his style of play doesn't really translate to these one-on-one matchups where you are forced to throw the ball. He's the type of guy who wants to run the ball and be mobile and scramble and confuse opposing defenses in order to open up his pass and get his favorable matchups. That's why I think these practices don't adequately show the role that Jalen Milroe is going to play in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. What was your thoughts on Milroe? Anything?
Well, I think the whole thing there is that's kind of the vibe because it's all vanilla, right? For everybody it kind of looks the same. Everybody's offense is going to look the same. We're going to have some basic concepts. And I think to that point, it's kind of the whole thing, I talked to you about with Jaden Higgins. It's like there's certain, I don't know if I said that to you, but when I look at what Jaden Higgins, when he did lose reps, I think there's an aspect of you have to understand that there's certain routes that he's going to fit better into in the NFL that he's not always being asked to run at the Senior Bowl because they're not scheming it for him. So that's again where it's like, even if the result's not positive, what can you take from the result? Like, what led to the result? Like, was there good things within that? How did he drop back in the pocket? Is he protecting the football? To Dan's point, right? Is he throwing it to the other team? Is he fumbling the snap? And if those things are clean with small hands, that's the concern.
Yeah.
So, like, that's
sure.
I think the Senior Bowl so much like, it can't all be about the result. It also has to be about the process. Because in the NFL, a team's focus is going to be what's going to get you to that result.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. So like that, we had Jackson Dart, we had Jalen Milroe, and then we had the Notre Dame quarterback and Riley Leonard, and then also Seth Hennigan out of Memphis.
That's a
But
moment.
while we were on the field, Troy was trying to get me to interview him so bad. He was like, bro, listen, go talk to that guy. He's been hitting everything out there. Talk to us about this guy.
Well, Dan,
Is he a sleeper?
You killed your interview. I don't know if the people ever see it, but they need to see it because it was fantastic. So I'm glad you chose to go elsewhere.
I did not.
Look, man. No, man. Like, and it was the thing that I was pointing out with Jackson is when I see a play like that, I'm expecting things to be slow, and I'm expecting him to wait on everything. And that's not to say it was perfect. Like there was reads in there. I was like, that's not going to be open. He threw it anyway. But it was playing with so much anticipation. For a young player, it's like if you're obviously size, he's built like an NFL quarterback. I mean, that dude's massive, probably more of a pocket quarterback. But we also saw him take off a little bit. If you're throwing with that anticipation and that timing, I think it's confidence in what you're seeing.
You know who he sounds like to me? Who you're explaining?
Who?
Jared Goff.
Jared Goff.
I can tell. I mean, it sounds exactly like Jared Goff, man.
It's pretty good ball.
That's why he likes him.
I'm not calling him Jared.
That's why he likes him, man. I found it
a-
out. Jared Goff comparison. I mean, it can't go wrong.
A Seth Hennigan absolute steal of the draft, ladies and gentlemen. Who knows? But then making a transition right over into some of the path. Go ahead. What you got?
Ooh. Oh, I was about to say, is this the guy that you're about to talk about? Because I know this is guy.
Some of the pass catchers you're talking about?
Bro, I thought we were about to go into the defense. I thought you were about to talk
Into the
about
defense.
defensive tackle.
Don't worry about that. I'm going to save that for you.
Because I know who you're talking about.
excited
I know who you're
I want
talking
him as a
about.
Buffalo Bill, but like we're going to wait for a little
Sorry,
bit.
bro. He's a Patriot.
Wide receivers for the American squad, right? I think I really only saw two standouts today from the reps that I was able to watch. Have to go with our good friend Jack Beck from TCU.
He had the catch of the day.
Yeah. Climbing the ladder, going out there. I really think that he is going to be a steal, and I absolutely love Jalen Royals as well. Right out of Utah State. Was winning a lot of his reps, incredible separation. He's going to be a damn threat year one.
Isaac Tesla also made some plays out of Arkansas. I noticed. You see these individual drills; it really shows off the athleticism. But then when they match up on the field, I will say Trey Amamos. Go back on the defensive side, Ole Miss corner.
Yeah,
he locked up. He really looked good. And I feel like in this specific practice, the American roster, I'll say the defense won, especially in the secondary against the playmakers and the quarterbacks. Every time you look up when they're doing 7-on-7s, it felt like the corners in the secondary had sticky coverage, getting pass breakups, and it was Amos most of the time. Melvin Smith, McWilliams from UCF, I remember made some plays, number 27. Brendan Adams, another UCF corner. They had a lot of players. Two linebackers out of Auburn as well was lurking in the middle. Jalen McLeod and Eugene Asante. So there's a lot of players. I honestly think Americans' defense won the practice over the American offense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, we were sitting right in front of linebackers. I mean, the athleticism at linebacker is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
It just doesn't look like linebackers anymore. I mean, some of those guys, you'll have some questions how it's going to translate because so much now is like running backs in the pass game and how they get involved. But in terms of matchup, for the most part, across the board, I think that's going to be so fascinating as we get to the game. I would say with the receivers, just to throw another, when you pointed out Jalen Royals, the concerns that I had about him, it's like he brought the positives, but he didn't show the negatives. Like, this dude looked like this is going to work. And I think the Senior Bowl is kind of the first step there where it's like Utah State, what's it going to look like? Let's put some better competition out there. And when he got opportunities, it worked. The guy was a separator. So I think Jalen Royals set himself up really well, and Ty Felton also had a couple wins in there too, just to point that out.
Felton as well, and as Troy did mention, these linebackers were also extremely athletic. Some of the standouts for me definitely had to be Jack Kaiser out of Notre Dame. Really liked what I was seeing, especially in his individual drills. And then, unfortunately, here's the story. Demetrius Knight II, South Carolina, man. Big fan of this guy, right?
Are you now, Dan?
Let me explain the story. All right, so we're out, right? First time ever interviewing a would-be NFL player, so give me a break. So these guys right over here, these seasoned pros, Troy and Colby, they're like, Dan, you got to get an interview. I'm like, nah, dude. It's my vocal cords are kind of like beat, you know.
You
like,
kept making
wait till
excuses.
tomorrow. I was trying to like get out of it because I was like, oh damn, I'm gonna mess up.
You were shy, bro.
So I
wish I was
did
there.
it. So I did it, and I conquered my fear, but I did mess up. My fear did come through. I was sitting right next to Demetrius Knight, and I said, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with South Carolina linebacker Demetrius. My boy. What you got going on, dude? I forgot his last name. And I didn't want to look at the back of his jersey and just like complete. Oh my God, it was terrible.
Bro, me and
Did he
Dose just
realize?
looked at each other.
Did he realize like this guy
100%.
doesn't know my name?
Oh,
100%.
oh yeah. He was.
He had a little smirk. He was trying not to laugh.
Yeah. He definitely would have like geeked out. Yeah. Listen, he definitely would have geeked.
Demetrius linebacker.
Linebacker, my guy, dude. Is what it is. Don't worry about it. It's vaulted. You're never seeing that footage anywhere.
We gotta see that.
But,
I gotta at least see it, bro.
Absolutely insane. Solid athleticism. Like this guy is a monster. Was winning several reps in 11-on-11s. He got to the quarterback twice as well. And when I asked him, I said, "Hey, who is the one quarterback in the NFL that you would like to sack the most?" Patrick Mahomes. He came in. He wants to go after the number one, man. Absolutely insane. And in fact, we have that clip.
Do we have that clip? I'll say, do we?
We
It's
have that.
strategically edited.
Oh,
It's
okay,
strategically
okay.
edited.
It's
where
a
you don't see it.
strategically edited clip.
Yeah, he's laughing, bro. I ain't gonna lie, bro. He's laughing.
Where is it, Dan? You posted on
It
your end?
was there.
It was on Roundtable.
Yeah, it was there.
Got it right here.
Uh,
So here's Dan asking him, and obviously it's edited, so we can't see the better part.
So last question, who's the quarterback in the NFL you want to sack the most?
I feel like it's the unanimous answer, but Mahomes.
Yes, sir.
There you
Damn,
go.
bro, he wants to go to the best.
There he is. And I'm sorry, Demetrius, for blanking on your last name during the heat of the moment.
Bills are gonna
Won't
draft
happen
him now.
again. Hey, listen,
Demetrius
we're going,
linebacker.
Hey, listen, we're going to the Super Bowl next week, so I'd rather have a boo-boo this week than next week. if
That's
you know what
true.
I'm
Are
saying.
you gonna forget Saquon's name?
Absolutely not.
Travis Kelce's name?
Absolutely. Dude, you know what? Maybe I inspired him to go out there and be a future Hall of Famer.
He's gonna get like
You know, he
20
went in the
sacks.
locker
This
room
guy
and he
forgot
was
my
just like,
name.
you know what? He's like,
Some media member dude didn't even
he
know
was
my
just like,
name,
I
bro.
gotta work harder. Yeah. That's what it is. He goes, I gotta work harder, bro.
That Dan
Oh,
Mitchell guy
damn.
from Roundtable Sports, I'm proving him wrong.
Yeah. Dude.
I'm going out there and tomorrow. I'm gonna have 5 sacks, so he knows my name. I want him to come back and interview
He
me.
screams your name when he gets a sack. Mitchell!
Yeah, he finds me. All right, so Colby, I know that you have been absolutely ecstatic about this one prospect, particularly on the interior defensive line, someone that you want for your New England Patriots. Educate the people. What do you got?
Bro, Dion Walker, it came in and looked
Massive.
absolutely phenomenal. By the way, the measurables of this guy are scary at the NFL level. For a defensive tackle, he came in at 6'6", 340 pounds. And what really got my eye on this dude was one rep they were doing like one-on-ones at the goal line. He's going up against a coach who has a pad. He goes full force off the line, really good burst off the line, and blows up this coach. This coach goes flying back. He's on the ground. This dude didn't go to help pick him up. He had no remorse for this coach. He has the dog in him. He has the measurables. This is a guy that I'm watching on day 2.
Very interesting. The Jets need a defensive tackle, so I like that. 6'6", 340. I got to look at the trenches tomorrow because I missed out. I really did. I did not see anything. I was focusing on the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and CB, so we appreciate that analysis right there, Colby. Is there any other? I know that you took a lot of notes. So where's your notepad? We're doing the show. You don't have your notepad?
I got the note. I wanted to point out the offensive line here, man, because
Yeah.
we just
Talk about the trenches.
We just
baby.
cooked
Talk
the
about
last
trenches.
offensive line, and the two people that I want to point out, we point out some bad. By the way, Savina, like I want to see a little bit more. Jonas Savalina, I don't know how you say dude's name. But the guys I want to point out. The guys I want to put the guys I want to point out. Willie Lumpkin, man. Is it? Yeah, I can hear myself kind of.
Yeah, put it closer like that. Yeah, right here. Yeah.
The guy I want to talk about Willie Lumpkin out of North Carolina.
Make it straight like that.
Yeah, like you want to
Willie
speak
Lumpkin
right
out of
into
North
it on the
Carolina.
top.
All right. And then I also wanted to talk about the offensive tackle, man, Carson Vincent. Like, dude, I didn't know what his name was, so I'm writing the wrong name down the whole time. But this was a group that had people movers. Like there was walls that they were creating behind that left side. And I think Lumpkin stood out because the one-on-ones, it was consistent. And he was a people mover in the run game. And I think the Senior Bowl is so much about that because the pass sets are going to be much more straightforward. You're going to get a lot of play action. It's going to be about moving guys. There's not going to be a lot of dynamic run scheme going on. It's going to be very straightforward. So it's simply, can you move the other piece? And we're hyping these D linemen that look fantastic. This was the group that I thought as an offensive line, when they would put the big names out there and you're like, that looks nasty on paper, there was success. But those two guys kind of flew under the radar and kind of paved their own way, and I think got themselves some attention against that group.
Wow, look at that. Dose of Dion insight. You can't ask for more.
Some dose of Dion insight. So, guys, are there any other prospects that we want to let the people know right before we wish them a happy evening and start locking in for day 2 tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say is that Mason Taylor, the tight end out of LSU, he's the type of guy who's going to look really good as a receiver, not very good as a blocker. On Draftaholics, when we broke down the tight ends, I had him comp to like a Mike Gesicki. He's someone who I thought made some really good plays overall in the receiving game today, so I'm going to be excited to see what he can do tomorrow.
Yeah. It's funny he mentions that. Again, we just want to remind you guys that Roundtable Sports does have an exclusive draft show hosted by Colby, hosted by Troy, by Broshmo, and also our good friend Derek, our Colts representative, that dives into all of this weekly on Thursdays. Rankings, mock drafts are very, very soon. So you're going to want to go on ahead and subscribe to this Roundtable Sports YouTube channel and also turn on those bell notifications so you never miss any Senior Bowl recaps, Super Bowl, in which that we will be there next week, giving you as much coverage as humanly possible. We cannot thank you enough for always tuning in and rocking with your boys over at Roundtable Sports.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to our Day 1 Senior Bowl recap. All right, we'll be here again tomorrow breaking down day number 2. Do not forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit the like button. We really do appreciate that. And then go to social media and follow us at Roundtable Sports on Twitter and on Instagram because that's where you get the real-time engaging content. All right, we're posting that all day tomorrow, just like we did all day today. We love you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Senior Bowl recap tomorrow. Shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this show. Have a great rest of your evening, folks. Let's get it. Peace.